you. Wow, what a crowd. What a crowd, and it's great to be here. I've been to the other two meatballs, so thank you for having me at this one. We're real excited. We're here. We got some great speakers and really here to discuss parents' rights, particularly with regards to the upcoming school year. If you have been listening to some of the murmurs going around, particularly in Washington lately, if you listen to some of the stuff that's being percolated around the CDC, there's a movement to try to impose more restrictions on the American people. And I just want to say in Florida, there will be no lockdowns. There will be no school closures. There will be no mandates in the state of Florida. Floridians have been, are, and will remain free to choose what's best for themselves and their families, and we will protect their right to work, we'll protect the right of businesses to operate, and we will protect the right of our kids to attend school in person. And we don't have mandates, we won't. The one issue where we are seeing a potential for mandate regarding local government is with the forced masking of school children in our upcoming school year. And as of today, very few school districts are requiring that. Most of them, I think wisely, are saying this is a parent's decision to make about what's best for their individual kids. But nevertheless, we have a lot of push from the CDC and others to make every single person, kids, staff, have to wear masks all day, regardless of their immune status, regardless of the effect it has on their educational experience. That would be a huge mistake. If you look back, we were the only large state in the country last year to have an in-person school year for the whole school year. There were many that had massive amounts of their students didn't have access to in-person education. We thought it was very important. We looked at the data. We understood that schools were low-risk environments and that closing them was devastating to parents and families, and it was something that we could not allow to happen in the state of Florida. So we needed to stand up for our students, we needed to stand up for our parents, and we did. Now, Florida has never mandated masks for the public or for schools. Last school year, though, a majority of school districts required the students to wear masks. Other school districts, I think between 20 and 25, did not, and many charter and private schools did not require masks. And so what were the results? Well, a study out of Brown University looked at case rates in schools in Florida, Massachusetts, and New York. And they found, and this is a very credible study, no of case rates and mask mandates. In other words, you had schools that did not have mandates that had similar outcomes as the ones that did require it. And if you think about it, these kids are in school, they have the masks on. When they go out of school and hang out, do you think they're wearing the masks when they're at each other's home? Of course not. So it's terribly uncomfortable, and it's something that a lot of parents have been frustrated about. A lot of students have been frustrated about. I mean, I remember I've had kids come up to me saying like, oh, I just don't want to wear the mask going forward. But we can say in Florida, the 2020-2021 school year, that the districts that did not require masks did not perform statistically different from those who did. The charter schools and the private schools that didn't require it also had similar outcomes. And so we have to look at the data. Even if the data said something else, that doesn't mean you mandate, because there's still individual well-being and freedom at stake and all that. But we clearly know based off last year that those mask mandates in schools had virtually no impact on the overall shape of the viral curves that happen on a seasonal basis. And so CDC's position is every single student every single staff member, every single teacher must be masked at all time. And that is even though CDC's own estimate in March was that 41% of K through 12 students had already recovered from COVID, and so it's likely very more. And if you look at the seasonal wave we're experiencing in Florida, that's being driven a lot by a lot of younger people. They're not getting really sick from it or anything, but they are getting it, and they will develop immunity as a result of those infections. And so they don't count that. They don't count vaccinate. I mean, if the teachers, they still say you have to do it. I don't know what message that sends. I mean, they've tried to encourage people to get vaccinated, but if you still have to suffer under the mask, then what message does that send to people to want to do it? So it's very, very puzzling. But one of the things that's frustrating is there's no end in sight to what these policies will do. There's no off-ramp. We were told that the off-ramp was vaccination. Now we're told that that's not going to be the case, and yet you're going to have to do masking. You may have to do restrictions and potentially other severe forms of mitigation, which we know will have a devastating impact on so many people's lives and livelihoods and freedoms. So CDC's policies, by doing this so ham-handedly, by not looking at things like this Brown study, it really shows a callous disregard for the physical, emotional, and academic well-being of our children. They need to be put first. We had this whole year and a half where so many people in our society wanted to put the kids last. They wanted to impose most of the most extreme mitigation on the kids that were the least likely to face any negative harm from this, and obviously who were in very developmental stages where this could really do a lot of potential damage. The forced masking, it has harmed students. We're going to hear from parents and students who've had a lot of difficulty with this. And so the question is, you know, shouldn't this be something that the parent isn't best to evaluate, the effect that this would have on their children? Why would we have government force masks on our kids when many of these kids are already immune through prior infection? They're at virtually zero risk of significant illness, and when virtually every school personnel, they've had access to vaccines for months and months. Remember last year, the unions were saying you can't have school open because there's no vaccines. Well, now that you've had that, it's been available for months and months, then the kids still have to wear the mask. It doesn't make sense. And so what we're doing here today is we're going to hear some of the stories about what this has meant over the last year. And what I want is I want to empower parents to be able to make the best decisions they can for the well-being of their children. Now, as I mentioned, virtually every school district in Florida at this point has said that they are going to do optional and let the decision reside where it belongs, with the parents. And we encourage them. We're happy with that. Last year, we let them make these policies because, quite frankly, I just wanted the kids in school. We needed to get them in. I didn't think the masks were going to be effective for K through 12, but you know what? I was like, you guys have a tough job. There was a lot of people that didn't want the kids in school, all that, and I knew it would be good because I saw the data from other parts of the world, and it was. But now we're in a situation where we really do need to make sure that the parents' rights are protected, and those parents have to come first. Now, last month, I signed HB 241, the Parents' Bill of Rights. The bill prevents any government institution from infringing on the fundamental rights of a parent to direct the upbringing, education, health care, and mental health of a child. And I think that this decision about whether parents want their kids to have to wear masks all day in school, I think that's a decision that falls squarely within the contours of this Parents' Bill of Rights that I signed. And so And so accordingly, very soon I'll be signing an executive order which directs the Florida Department of Education and Department of Health to issue emergency rules protecting the rights of parents to make this decision about wearing masks for their children. We think that that's the most fair way to do it. You know, I have young kids. My wife and I are not going to do the mask with the kids. We never have. I want to see my kids smiling. I want them having fun. And I don't know. I mean, look, my kids are a little younger, but I can tell you, whatever you think of masks, you got to wear it properly. My kids ain't going to wear that thing properly. We know that. So we don't want to, so we don't want to. I wouldn't want to do that. But at the same time, look, if a parent really feels that this is something that's important for their kid, we're not stopping that. They absolutely have every right to equip their student with whatever types of masks that they want and have them go to school if they believe that that's a protection that's important for their children. I think that's the fairest way to do it, to let the parents have the decision. It would not be fair if we told parents who wanted the kids to wear masks they weren't allowed to do it. But it's certainly not fair to force parents who don't believe the masks are good for their kids to force them to have to send their kids a mask. So this way, parents are able to make the decision that's best for their families, and I think that that's the fairest way to do it. And I also think that that's really most consistent with the data that we have seen over the last school year, and the fact that these mandates have not proven to really make a big difference. And so we got a lot of people that are going to come up. They're going to tell some stories. So I'm going to call them up, and then we'll go from there. So I have Jennifer Mitchell and her daughter Samantha. Where are you guys at?
Here.
Is Samantha here?
She's not here.
Okay.
She wanted to be here, okay. Sort of.
You're not reading all that, are you?
I'll try and cut it down. I have a lot to say. Hi, my name is Jen Mitchell. I'm a mother of 2 children. One is going into 3rd grade with a speech impediment, and the other 5th. I'm also a small business owner, and my husband works full-time. Last year was off to a difficult start between lockdowns and school being canceled. During that time, my husband and I needed to juggle between our jobs that support and feed our family and our children's education. My business could not be left unattended as I work and travel, and we were in crisis mode and trying to navigate online learning with both children. Our children had no contact with other children as everything was closed and locked down. I felt like a terrible parent, and my kids and I both cried on a fairly regular basis. I noticed a change in both kids. Then a sign of normalcy. Camp resumed. My kids could be kids again. They came home happy, they were sweaty, talking about their day, had play dates, sleepovers. Back to normal. We had 0 COVID cases all summer, and the kids did not wear a mask. I questioned why our camp was able to operate without a mask and the schools could not. In the fall, I feared sending them to a hospital-like school setting. When I learned of the mask mandates in the 2020 school year, I made it my mission to find a school with no mask mandate or less restrictions on masks. I applied for scholarships, financial aid, and I found an alternative to Collier County Public School. I was glad there were less restrictions. However, the masking that still took place was enough to negatively affect my kids. We had friends in private and charter schools that were no masks at all, and they all reported the same thing, little to no cases. It wasn't a perfect world, even with less masking. The kids in elementary had it tough emotionally. My daughter Samantha was a new kid and struggled to make solid friendships. She had challenges reading people, so with the mask, she misread her friends often with their facial expressions, only being able to look in their eyes. This made her nervous, uncomfortable, and often on the defense, causing her to act out. Until this year, Sam has never been in trouble or had behavior issues. Her school counselor said that this misunderstanding and communications were very problematic and caused a lot of discord, especially with the little ones who are socially developing. The counselor said that she used to pass the kid in the hall and immediately know if something was wrong. This year, not the case. Sam hit her bottom last year when we had to seek outside help. To learn how to handle her stress and anxiety. She's 8. Not only was it upsetting we needed to seek out mental health, but we found that we couldn't really find any therapists or child psychologists with an opening because so many kids are having issues this year. Last year, right before we started masking in the schools, I spoke before the school board. I had predicted what was almost alarmingly accurate recap of what actually had occurred. I had told them if we cover all their faces and teach them to stay far away from others as possible, we will have lasting implications on our children's mental health. I told them to think of how these children will feel if a friend or teacher was fearful of one another. These missing smiles that make our kids feel comforted and loved. Sadly, this prediction came to fruition last year. It happened to my family. But more so, I've heard from many other parents with similar stories and their kids struggling with friendships, anxiety, and even suicidal thoughts or actions. If I had the choice, I may have opted to homeschool last year, but like many parents who have 2-income households or 2 working parents, this was not an option. This year, our kids returned back to the same summer camp, and to date, there's still no issues with COVID. Kids and counselors alike were not wearing masks. Again, why is this not being talked about? The kids who have the privilege to get into private school or charter schools are protected from these mask mandates, yet kids who do not have the same privilege are being sacrificed. What upsets me even more is if this really was 2 weeks to stop the spread, it would have been a different story. This is going on 2 years of their childhood, 2 years of a world without hugging their friends in the hallway, 2 years of covering up those gorgeous smiles, 2 years of what's supposed to be a stress-free time in their lives. I'm here today as an advocate for all of our children. Please protect our children's mental health this year, and thank you for doing that.
Okay, Cindy Ray. Cindy Ray.
First of all, thank you, Governor Ron DeSantis, for the opportunity to speak in Free Florida. We really appreciate the opportunity, and thank you all for coming out today to support our governor in the great state. He is tirelessly working for all of us. As he said, I'm Cindy Ray. I am a West Coast native, born and raised in Venice, Florida. Very proud of my small little city on the beach. Happy to have moved back from northern New Jersey that I lived in during the majority of the lockdown. I moved back to Florida to become a teacher. I was a teacher for 7 years in Hillsborough County. I'm now a teacher in a local county here. Came back for the job. With all that said, I was willing to do whatever it took to get all of the children back in the classrooms. I wanted to support my families and my friends who had their children at home in not proper learning conditions. Unfortunately, teachers who were burnt out, tired, and just wanted the school year to be over. I could not wait to greet those people and those students in the hallway and in my classroom. As the school year progressed and we were wearing the masks, and I even contracted COVID-19 at a 17-person wedding. Had a quarantine, and that really set me back. And when I got back from quarantine, I said, we have to make this different. I have to be a different teacher. I have to be happy. We have to see the light at the end of the tunnel. I remember one specific student on one very particular day before Thanksgiving. I had pulled my mask down, probably drinking my 3rd cup of coffee, laughing, finally, and he looked at me and he said, Miss Ray, that's the first time I've seen you smile all year long. And I took that student's words and I lived with those for the rest of the school year. I would keep 6 feet away. I would make sure to smile and look at my students and make them feel safe, even though I knew that it was not the right thing to be covering my face all day. But if I could give one smile in 49 minutes, I was going to do that. They needed to see what I looked like and how happy I could be. As a teacher, and all of teachers know, we are rule followers. We follow the rules. We try to always do the right thing because we are in the forefront of children and our future. However, when I look at this mask mandate, it's not just about just putting on a mask. It's not about just going to get the vaccine. It's about what is going to be next. What is the next just thing? You said, get the vaccine, we can all be unmasked. We got the vaccine. We're vaccinating. We are having clinics. Go to the Department of Health. Walk into Publix, get your rotisserie chicken, get a jab. You can be free if you do that to take your mask off. Now, 1 week before school starts here in Florida, the CDC, about faces, turns the policy around. The American Academy of Pediatrics also said the same thing. 2 to 12 years old need to be fully masked all day long. We're vaccinated. We need to get these kids in school. They need to see my smile all 49 minutes of the day. They need to see your smiles all minutes in your home, and they need to interact with people. I had the unfortunate time this year of seeing the depression in the older population of those high school students. More Baker Acts than we know what to do with. More children not coming to school after being quarantined for 14 days because they're behind. So they get even more behind. I'm just here to say that it should be our choice. The foundation of America and the foundation of what we're built on is having the choice for what is best for you and your family. This isn't about the mask. I just want to reiterate that. That is all of the other things that could come down the pipe if we're willing to just say, okay, we'll do it for another 180 days. Thank you so much.
Okay, Christine DeVigli, parent.
Hi, I'm here actually representing all three of my girls. And when all this started, I pulled all of them out of school because my middle child has asthma. So, masks were not a possibility for us. And they're also vaccine injured, so vaccines were not an option for us. That first, half of that year, it was okay, but not awesome. But going into the next school year, when they knew everything was going to be virtual the whole time, this beautiful kid right here, she was going into her freshman year last year, and she went into it virtually. This kid has been an ACE student, and she's in the arts program in her high school. She's never had anything less than a B her whole entire academic career until last year, when she got her first 2 Fs. Yeah, her first 2 Fs. And that happened after she suffered from extreme depression, after she moved out of our house and in with her father because she just wanted to go to school. She didn't care if she had to put a mask on anymore, and she was willing to separate herself from her siblings to do that. This summer came, and she was right back home, excited, out spending time with her friends again, spending time in the public. No one's worrying about a thing until 5 days ago, 6 days ago, when the CDC changed their mind and decided that they were going to mask kids again. And now I have my now sophomore wondering, am I going to have to go back into school wearing a mask? Am I not going to be able to go to school this year? Am I going to be bullied if I choose not to wear a mask? These are all the questions that our high schoolers are having to deal with. These are all the questions our middle schoolers are having to deal with. And our elementary age kids. Our kids should not have to be going through this. I just want my kid to be able to go to school. She just wants to be able to go to school. These mask mandates, these mandates in general, they need to end, and they need to end now. Thank you so much.
All right, Dan Cook, and your daughter.
My daughter's more popular than I am, and I'm okay with that. So how great is it that we have a governor who defends freedom of choice and upholds the rights of the citizens of Florida? And so I'm really grateful for this opportunity to thank the governor for his leadership. I live in Collier County. I'm fortunate enough to be a parent of a charter school student, so she's never had to wear a mask except for when we went into the school board meetings to try to protest the mask mandates. And I bring that up because I speak to a lot of parent groups and parents across the state and across the country who are frustrated with school board members or superintendents who listen to the health departments and listen to the CDC, and here in Florida, they're bucking the governor, and they are continuing to push the masks on our kids. And I want to share the story of Collier County and what we've been able to do there through the grassroots and, of course, with the big assist from the governor. We have been able to push the mask optional policy from the school board members, but not just a watered down, we're going to do what the CDC says mask optional policy, through the grassroots efforts, through parents going to the school board members month after month after month, making use of our public comments. We were able to get the school board members to push back against the CDC, against the health department, and against their superintendents. And through the efforts of parents, we've had our school board members make amendments to the mask policy to essentially go wait for the governor's discretion on what to do with the mask. So I just want to share that story and encourage parents across Florida, across the whole country, that there is hope. If you organize, if you get into these meetings, that's how change happens. So. If you're hearing this message and if you're concerned about the mask policies moving forward, I encourage you to be at the next school board meeting. Don't let up. It takes consistency, it takes passion, and of course it takes a great governor to lead the way. So thank you for the opportunity.
All right, Allie Locke.
Good morning. My name is Allie Locke. I'm a high school teacher here in Lee County, and I'm also a parent of 2 school-age children. I come to you with 2 perspectives today. My children are young. They went into kindergarten and 2nd grade this year, and I also teach a population of students that know 0 English. And this year, we were very worried going in how my son, who is in kindergarten, and my students would be able to see my face and hear English sounds and hear how to form words and how to make out sentences, to learn how to read, to learn how to speak English. It was incredibly difficult this year to do that with my students, and oftentimes I had to pull my mask down for a second so they could hear me. It was impossible for them to learn appropriately. My son and my daughter, I had to come home every single day. They only went to school in the 4th quarter because we homeschooled them the first 3, but I had to correct things that my children heard wrong because they couldn't hear their teacher through the mask. Second, as a teacher in the high school, I saw how these mask mandates negatively affected everybody there. The teachers that didn't believe in the mask mandates we were terrified to speak out in fear of losing our jobs, in fear of retaliation from other teachers, from the school board, from anyone else who thought differently than we did. So we did what we had to do to go back to work to see our kids, because that's what we care about, is our students. We want to be with them, but we want to be able to have our rights respected. We want to be able to choose, and we want to be able to teach our children without our faces covered. So I appreciate Governor DeSantis and this today. Thank you all for coming and listening to us and hearing the perspective of teachers. Thank you.
Brenda Cook.
Hello, my name is Brenda Clark. I first would like to thank Governor DeSantis for your leadership and your involvement and caring about what parental rights are. I also would like to thank Senator Rodriguez for passing the Parents' Bill of Rights. That is a huge... That's a huge, huge win for parents across Florida. We have the choice to raise our children the way we see fit. I spent the entire school year with, I've had to basically take a leave of absence from my job. My daughter stayed home. She has severe asthma. The school would not allow her to attend school without a mask, even though she had 2 doctor's notes and they said she could wear one for short periods of time, but not all day. The school district, after an entire year of fighting them, would not allow her to attend. So she, along with me, we took the school district for due process hearing and actually took them to court. I'm waiting, hopefully a ruling this week, but my message is don't stop fighting for your kids. I also am a co-founder of Parents' Rights, Parents for Informed Choice, and not only do I represent my children, but I hope that our organization helps parents get the courage to fight for them as well. Thank you.
Daniela Dye.
Hello, everybody. So one of the things that we've talked about is the disproportionate accommodations that impacts the masked people, whether it's in school or whether it's in the grocery store if we've gone to Publix. When my husband was growing up, he was a part of a household that was mixed race. When we got together, he explained a story to me about his father. His father was the first to enter a class that was desegregated. I thought it was crazy. I couldn't imagine anything like it. And then I went to Publix, and when we went to the stores, we were segregated. When we went to schools, we were segregated. We have this constant separation of classes, and it is enforced by rules that are federal, and I'm glad that we have a governor that has come into place to make sure it's not in our state. We went through all of the correct procedures when we came to our school year. We wanted our kids to be with their friends that they've known for the last 6 years. We've been in the same school district, in the same school. We went to the doctors. We consulted 3 different medical professionals to get an opinion on what would be best for our children. All of those requests were denied by the school when a 504 meeting was held for each of the 3 children. We went through all of the things we needed to do to let the school know that our children were not in the organization to wear a mask. It would not work for our children. We decided to homeschool our children. We pulled them from the district. As such, we are looking for co-ops and things like that, and found that there are not organizations that can help you school children because of the fact that the state laws in Florida don't allow other people to teach your children. We're very fortunate that we were able to pull them, and one of us will always be home teaching our children. There are many single income families, there are many single parent families that don't have that right or that ability. Not the right, the ability, I apologize. Do not take the compliance to have an education as an acceptance for the policy. Right. There are many of us that comply because they feel like they're losing out on life. They can't work, they can't get an education because they don't have the ability to just quit and stay home. One of the things that's not talked about often is the fact that if you don't comply with the medical field and the things that they want you to do, it goes into a medical kidnapping case. It is few and far between, but we face that risk and that responsibility as parents. So when we go through and take the precautions for our families, know that we don't do it lightly, and we take a huge responsibility for that. We have parents' rights, we've had them, we will continue to have them, and with this bill and this executive order, we'll continue to fight, and we're not few and far between, we're everywhere. So keep showing up.
Okay, Wayne, where are you at? Are you going to say something? Or did you? I would just like to thank the governor on behalf of all the business owners. We opened up last July this location. We didn't know if we were going to make it. And thank God to our governor. We're here, we're thriving. And there's hundreds and hundreds of thousands of businesses that have not made it. I have friends all across the country. 40 years, 50 years in business, they lost everything. That could have happened to us. But thank God for our governor. Well, thanks for hosting us. I think it's important to point out with the CDC's change in terms of what they just recently did, what they cited for that was a study out of India which was not accepted for peer review, but which compared the viral load in vaccinated people with vaccines that aren't approved in the United States. And so what does that have to do with this? So they claim there's all this data. They haven't produced data. They produce these models, which is just all the assumptions you can put in. And so that is what they based it on. And I think that you're finding a lot of people that are like, well, wait a minute, you keep changing the rules on us. What's going on? But I can tell you, we've got to use common sense. We've got to do what's right, and we're not consigned by what some bureaucracy says. And I'll give you the best example that we did in Florida. You know, last December, the CDC did not want seniors to be vaccinated first priority. Their view was you had to get, they had equity considerations, all these other things. And I looked at it, I said, well, gee, 84% of the COVID mortality is age 65 and up. We're going to give vaccine priority to age 65 and up. We're putting seniors first. So we were the first state to announce that. We said seniors first, and we did, you know, from hospitals to health departments. We did go to senior communities. We did drive-through places like the Villages. We did retail pharmacies. We did churches. We did whatever we could do, and our view is, if you're 65 and up, we're going to provide you access to this. Opportunity for all to take it, mandate for none, of course, but that is something we worked hard to do, and we did. The result is we've done almost 4 million seniors, you know, have been able to get shots in the state of Florida, and we would not have been able to do that as quickly as we had done it if we had followed the other priority, which was, to me, not based on all what really mattered, which was trying to protect the vulnerable population. So we did that. It was the right thing to do. Other states followed, and eventually the agency had to change and acknowledge that, yes, you do needed to do age 65 and up. It's very, very important. So we've done that, and we're proud of that, and we worked in a whole host of different ways to be able to get that done. But we had to look at the data ourselves, and we had to make the decision that was best for the people of Florida, and particularly for Florida seniors, and that was the right thing to do. So we're proud of that. I can't see you guys, so if you tell me your name and yes, sir.
What's the possibility of expanding just like testing capabilities for COVID-19 in the state of Florida, any other non-state, specifically rapid testing, like places centrally fuel?
So there's a whole host of testing. I mean, you go almost every corner now. This is a major cottage industry. Pretty much every retail pharmacy, you can get a test very quickly. And I think these are just very ubiquitous throughout the state of Florida. So we think that's you know, the way to do. Just like with vaccinations, you know, we're not running sites necessarily anymore like we used to, because it's out in the community. You can go in any drugstore and get it, and that's just that. Yes, sir.
Yes, Brandon Leslie, Florida Citizen Voice. I just wanted to ask about, we're not talking enough about what the media is doing with overhyping of COVID. Do you think that plays a role into these knee-jerk reactions that we're seeing with Broward County enforcing masks on the case?
So the question is media how they deal with COVID? Well, look, I mean, they try to present it in a way that is most likely to create angst in the population. There's just no doubt about it. I mean, for example, you know, for example, you have this situation. You saw it in Great Britain. You saw it in Israel. You saw it in a place like Gibraltar, where there's 98% vaccination. You see these cases going up. Same with the Sun Belt, Florida, Texas, all these other states. You're seeing that. And I think they're not putting that in context of the fact that, you know, these vaccines, while particularly for at-risk people, protect against, I think, pretty good protection against serious illness. Clearly, people are testing positive. I mean, it's not preventing positive tests. And so you're seeing that over and over again. At the end of the day, though, if you're testing positive and you have a mild or asymptomatic, that's not something that we should get spun up about. But I think it's not presented in the right context. And what I found is whatever indicator they can do to say is bad, they will do. If there's good indicators, you just never hear about it. You never hear about it. So what will happen here, and we have seasonal viral curves with this. Summer is Florida's main season for whatever reason. So you saw it in Arkansas, some of those, they're now going down. You know, we're going to get to the top of this thing pretty soon. It's going to go down. Then you're going to start to see it go in more northern parts of the country, the Midwest, some of these other places. It's going to kind of be the same thing. And I just think people should understand that when that's doing, if you are vaccinated or if you've had COVID, you have immunity too. Testing positive as somebody that's been vaccinated, and then you have a very mild situation, you know, that is not something that you would shut down society for. That's not something you should shut schools down for. It's not something you should do that. So I just think what we've tried to do in Florida is not try to play off fears, not try to ratchet up any hysteria. Just understand, put the facts out, let people make decisions that are best for them, and particularly on the fact that, look, we had hoped with the vaccines that they would produce herd immunity, that you would not get infected, but we are seeing people test positive. I mean, I think you're probably less likely to test positive, but you are seeing that. So just put that information out there. Let people know that that's what's happening and that's what could be expected going forward. But always keep an eye on all these important things in our state, particularly our kids who are coming into schools. And I'll tell you, you go back last summer when we said we're going back. Oh my gosh. If you remember that hysteria, I mean, they were saying that, oh, the kids, this is going to be so bad, all this other stuff. And here's what I knew. I knew that they had an agenda that they were trying to push. I knew what they were doing. But I also had data from Europe and from other places where kids were in school in person. And I saw what had happened there. And I saw what had happened in other parts of the world. And I saw that the schools were not a high-risk environment, and that denying kids an education was catastrophic. And so why would we not make every effort to get them back in, especially given the data that we had at that time? And so we did it. We gave school districts obviously a lot of latitude. Some parents, we told all the parents, look, I understand there's a lot going around. People are saying a lot of things. If you want to opt virtual, that's no problem. We're going to give you the choice on that. And what happened was kids went back, and then as they were in for a week or two, the sky didn't fall. More parents started putting their kids in. And so a lot of the school districts by the end of the year, I mean, you had almost everybody. I really believed last year at that time that after 4 weeks of school in Florida, I thought every school would have to open. Because, you know, you look at the data, you look at the results, and that didn't happen. You had schools that the kids were locked out for over a year in certain parts of the country. And my fear is they're going to use this now as a means to justify closures. Now, they're not going to get away with it in Florida, obviously, but I do think... But I do think that that it is something that's a danger for other jurisdictions throughout the country, and I do worry about playing footsie with closures and lockdowns in other parts of the country. I think that would be catastrophic. We know that those blunt mitigation efforts did virtually nothing to interrupt the viral curve. We know that, but we know it did huge damage to people. We know people's lives were destroyed, mental health destroyed, businesses destroyed, jobs lost, all those other things. So we don't want to do it. Okay, got time for one more. Yes, sir.
Rick Stevens from the Florida Citizens Alliance. We've heard all the comments from the parents about how it's harmful for their children. Would you consider that kind of harm a qualifying incident for the Hope Scholarship?
Oh, I guess that's illegal. So we have Hope Scholarships, and basically it's for students who've been treated poorly in school. I'm not sure. I mean, you'd have to look at the statute on that, but I will say this. You have seen an increased interest in school choice as a result of what's happened with COVID. Because, you know, you remember the teacher union sued me to close the schools last year. You know, we won the lawsuit, but, you know, that's what it was. And then there's other jurisdictions in the country where teachers were basically, maybe that's curtain call. There's other jurisdictions where they weren't able to get in. So I'd have to look, but I think at the end of the day, one of the things that's so frustrating about this whole experience is some of the people that are advocating for mitigation measures and mandates and stuff, they never acknowledge the harms of what comes with that. And you have to do that. And so, for example, you know, when this all started, we knew nursing homes were going to be a big source of problem in terms of the elderly population. So I banned hospitals from sending the sick patients back into nursing homes. We limited visitation. We did a lot of stuff. And we were able to prevent some of the bad things that happened in some of those other states. At the same time, those mitigation efforts took a toll. And as we went on, I had to get those families reunited with their loved ones. We couldn't just do it indefinitely. So it's a balancing act. And I think we probably did the right thing because we reduced, we saved a lot of lives doing that. But at the same time, you had huge problems when they're not able to live normally with people coming in to visit like that. So we restored the visitation last summer, and we got that going again. And then obviously we've prioritized nursing homes for vaccines, so we did all that. But we were always mindful of, okay, what could happen negative on this? And my fear and frustration with the things like the masks is the CDC's never asking questions about, okay, having a kid in a mask for 7 or 8 hours, is that healthy for the kid? What negative impacts are happening for that? Obviously, we've spoken with a lot of students. I mean, a lot of students just want to be able to breathe free. They don't want to have to do it. Very uncomfortable, but I think there may be more to it than just that. So any of these things that a school district would do, you can't just bat your chest and say, hey, we're fighting to slow the spread. You have to look and say, what is the ramifications of that? And I think after a year of being in school, we should be able to look at this and say, were those policies instrumental last year in engineering better outcomes? And I think we have examples of school districts that didn't do that, private schools, charter schools, and basically the outcomes were very similar. Thanks, everybody. I got to run. We'll see you.